I stood in the shadows of the parking garage, watching as federal agents escorted Marcus out of the building, his hands cuffed behind his back. His designer suit couldn't mask the defeat etched across his face. 3 months ago, I was the one being humiliated and escorted out, my career in shambles, my reputation destroyed. The difference? I walked out with nothing but a box of belongings. He's walking out with federal charges. I never planned to take down the entire department, but some lies can't stay buried. Some betrayals cut too deep. And when you've lost everything, revenge isn't just sweet, it's necessary. The name's Zayden Mitchell. 5 years ago, I walked through the glass doors of Kingston and Associates with nothing but student loan debt and desperate ambition. It's funny how quickly life can change. One moment you're the golden boy of financial analytics, the next you're labeled a troublemaker, a liability. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I still remember my first day. Sweaty palms, discount suit that didn't quite fit right, and a desperate need to prove myself. My dad had just lost his job, Mom's medical bills were piling up faster than we could open them, and my little sister was eyeing college brochures. I wasn't just hungry for success. I was starving for it. Kingston wasn't just a prestigious consulting firm. It was my family's lifeline. Those first years, I barely saw daylight. I'd arrive before anyone else, fingers flying across spreadsheets while the cleaning crew vacuumed around my desk. I'd leave long after the security guard's shift change. Weekends? Holidays? Those were just opportunities to get ahead. And it paid off. Within 3 years, I went from junior analyst to senior financial strategist. My recommendations had saved clients millions. My reports were used as templates for new hires. I was building something, or so I thought. Then came Marcus Davis. The firm brought him in as our new department head. Harvard MBA, former Wall Street wunderkind, with a smile that could charm investors out of their last dollar. The first time we met, he gripped my shoulder, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You and me, Zayden, we're cut from the same cloth. Hungry dogs run faster." Something about him made you want to be in his orbit, to earn his approval. When he'd call me into his office late at night, bourbon in hand, to discuss strategy, I felt like I'd finally made it. Under Marcus's mentorship, I flourished. He pushed me harder, demanded more, but also opened doors I couldn't have accessed alone. "You remind me of myself," he'd say, "except you've got something I never had: integrity." The irony of that statement still makes my stomach turn. Everything changed when Kingston landed the Meridian account. Meridian Technologies, a healthcare giant with billions in annual revenue and a reputation for ruthless efficiency, the kind of client that makes careers. Marcus pulled me into his corner office with the view of the city skyline and slapped me on the back so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. "This is our moment," he said, eyes gleaming. "I want you leading the financial analysis team. This account can set you up for life." And I needed that life-changing opportunity. Mom's multiple sclerosis was progressing faster than the doctors anticipated. The experimental treatment not covered by insurance cost more per month than my rent. Dad was working double shifts at his new lower-paying job. Every night I'd call home, trying to sound confident as I promised them everything would be okay. Every morning, I'd stare at myself in the mirror and whisper, "Failure is not an option." If I'd known then what working on the Meridian account would cost me, my career, my reputation, nearly my sanity, would I have still said yes? That's the question that kept me awake during those dark weeks after everything fell apart. But when you're standing on the edge of success, you never see the abyss opening beneath your feet. I first noticed the discrepancies on a Tuesday night. Everyone had gone home hours ago, but I was triple-checking the quarterly projections before our big presentation to Meridian's board. Something in the revenue forecast didn't add up. growth percentages that defied market trends, profit margins that seemed suspiciously inflated. At first, I thought it was my mistake. 3 sleepless nights can make anyone miss details. But the more I dug, the more my stomach knotted. The numbers weren't just optimistic, they were fabricated. Someone had systematically altered financial models, created phantom growth projections, and manipulated risk assessments. That someone had access to master files, executive sign-offs, and client communications. That someone was Marcus. I remember standing in my apartment at 3 a.m., spreadsheets and documents scattered across my floor. The truth laid bare in highlighted inconsistencies and annotated falsehoods. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just creative accounting or aggressive forecasting. This was fraud that could tank Meridian stock, cost people their retirement funds, their livelihoods, and my name was on those reports. "We need to talk," I texted Marcus at dawn. "Privately. It's urgent." He suggested his office, early, before anyone arrived. The sunrise painted his corner office in golden light. As I laid out the evidence, my voice steady despite the hurricane in my chest. I expected shock, perhaps even gratitude for catching a serious error before it reached the client. "You always were too thorough for your own good," he said finally, leaning back in his leather chair. His face transformed, the mentor mask slipping to reveal something cold, calculating. "Do you have any idea what's at stake here? Our integrity? The law?" My voice cracked. "Marcus, if we present these numbers—" He slammed his fist on the desk, making me flinch. "If we don't present these numbers, we lose Meridian. The firm loses $20 million in annual billing, and dozens of people lose their jobs, including you." When I stood my ground, his tactics changed. He circled his desk, arm around my shoulder like old times. "Listen, everyone plays this game. You think Meridian doesn't know? They want results, not reality. Help me fix this, and I'll make sure that promotion comes through. Think about your mother's treatment." The mention of my mother was what did it. Something snapped inside me. I shoved his arm away, my voice rising. "You don't get to use my family as leverage for your fraud." His face darkened. "You ungrateful little—" The slap came out of nowhere, the crack of his palm against my cheek echoing in the empty office. My vision blurred, more from shock than pain. In the 5 years I'd known him, I'd never seen this side of Marcus. I lunged at him, grabbing his pristine shirt collar, slamming him against the wall. "You think you can buy me? Threaten me?" Papers went flying as we crashed into his desk. Security cameras be damned. For a moment, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. "You're done, Zayden," he hissed, straightening his tie after I released him. "You've just committed career suicide." By noon, I was sitting in HR, facing not just Marcus, but 2 executives and the legal counsel. They had a file. Emails I'd supposedly sent, discussing manipulating data. Timestamps showing I'd accessed and altered files. Even a witness statement from a colleague claiming I'd discussed making the numbers work no matter what. "This is insane," I protested. "He's framing me. Check the original files. Check the server logs." "We have, Mr. Mitchell," the legal counsel said coldly. "The evidence is quite clear." 2 security guards escorted me out. Not the quick, dignified exit I'd seen when others were laid off. This was a spectacle. My access card was cut in half before my eyes. My personal belongings were dumped in a cardboard box. Colleagues I'd worked alongside for years turned away, avoided eye contact, as if my alleged dishonesty was contagious. As the elevator doors closed on my former life, Marcus caught my eye across the lobby and had the audacity to mouth, "I'm sorry it came to this." That night, alone in my apartment, I punched the wall until my knuckles bled, screaming until my voice gave out. Not just for myself, but for my family who depended on me, for the truth that was being buried. For the trust I had foolishly given to a man who had calculated my downfall with the same precision he used to falsify financial reports. 3 weeks after being fired, I hit rock bottom. 27 job applications, 11 rejections, 16 painful silences. My savings were evaporating faster than morning dew. The landlord had started leaving passive-aggressive notes about rent. Mom's medical bills kept coming, each one like a knife to the gut. I couldn't bring myself to tell them I'd lost my job. Instead, I lied during our weekly calls, describing fictional meetings and phantom projects, while my voice cracked under the weight of my deception. I was nursing a cheap beer at a bar I couldn't afford when someone slid onto the stool beside me. Alexis, one of the junior analysts from my former team. My body tensed, ready for accusations or awkward pity. "You're not the first, you know," she said without preamble, eyes darting nervously toward the door. "Marcus has done this before." She slid a USB drive across the bar. "I've been documenting things that didn't add up. I was too scared to say anything, but after what happened to you—" Her voice trailed off, laden with guilt. That night, hunched over my laptop in my darkened apartment, I found my purpose again. Alexis had compiled a treasure trove. Emails Marcus thought were deleted. Original versions of reports before his improvements. Recorded conversations where he pressured team members to alter projections. She wasn't the only one who suspected. She was just the only one brave enough to reach out. I stood at the crossroads of my life. Path 1. Walk away, start fresh somewhere new, protect what little reputation I had left. Path 2. Fight back, risk everything, possibly for nothing. The sensible choice was obvious. But at 3 a.m., staring at my mother's face in a family photo, the woman who'd taught me that integrity wasn't negotiable, who'd worked 2 jobs to raise us after Dad left, who never complained even as her body betrayed her, I knew I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent. Sometimes, she used to tell me, doing the right thing feels like jumping off a cliff. You do it anyway. So I jumped. The next 6 weeks became a blur of clandestine meetings and sleepless nights. I meticulously built my case, pixel by pixel, number by number. I reached out to former colleagues who might corroborate my story. Most ignored me. Some threatened legal action if I contacted them again. A few, those who'd witnessed Marcus's methods firsthand, but had families to feed, mortgages to pay, shared information on the condition of anonymity. I lived on ramen and coffee, my apartment walls transformed into a conspiracy board. Sticky notes, connected by red string. Timelines, highlighted passages from compliance handbooks. I became obsessed, my body thinning, dark circles deepening beneath my eyes. Some nights, doubt would creep in like a toxic fog. What if I was wrong? What if there was a legitimate explanation? What if this was just the delusional crusade of a disgraced employee? Then I'd remember the look in Marcus's eyes when he realized I wouldn't be bought, the calculated way he'd framed me, the lives that would be affected when Meridian's investors discovered they'd been fed lies. The turning point came when I discovered Marcus had done this at his previous firm, a scandal quietly buried with non-disclosure agreements and generous severance packages. I found a former colleague of his who'd been similarly discarded, now working at a small accounting firm in Chicago. His hands shook as he told me his story over video chat, fear still evident 5 years later. "They'll destroy you," he warned. "They have resources you can't imagine." "They already tried," I replied. "Now it's my turn." With enough evidence compiled, I contacted the Securities and Exchange Commission. The initial call felt anticlimactic, a bored-sounding agent taking details, promising someone would look into it. 2 days of silence followed, my hope waning with each passing hour. Then came the call. A senior investigator wanted to meet, in person, Immediately. I remember smoothing down my only good shirt, now slightly too large, as I waited in a sterile government office. The three investigators who filed in didn't look like the cavalry I'd imagined, just tired public servants with overflowing caseloads. But they listened. For 4 hours they listened, taking notes, asking pointed questions, occasionally exchanging glances when a particularly damning piece of evidence was presented. "Why are you doing this, Mr. Mitchell?" the lead investigator asked as our meeting concluded. "Most whistleblowers in your position expect compensation." The question caught me off guard. Why was I doing this? For vindication? Revenge? Justice? The answer surprised even me. "Because numbers don't lie," I said finally. "People do, and I can't be one of those people anymore." As I walked out of that building, the weight that had pressed on my chest for weeks lifted slightly. Whatever happened next, the truth was no longer mine, alone to carry. I had jumped off the cliff. Now I just had to trust I'd survived the fall. The investigation moved with unexpected swiftness. 2 weeks after my meeting with the SEC, I was making breakfast when my phone exploded with notifications. The headline from the Wall Street Journal blazed across my screen. "Kingston and Associates under federal investigation for fraud. Top executives placed on leave." My hands trembled so badly I dropped my coffee mug, hot liquid and ceramic shards scattering across the kitchen floor. I spent that day in a daze, watching the story unfold across financial news networks. Kingston's stock plummeted. Meridian publicly severed ties. The firm issued a terse statement about cooperating fully with authorities while conducting an internal review. No names were mentioned, but I knew, and soon everyone would know. The calls started coming that afternoon. Former colleagues, journalists, even headhunters suddenly interested in my unique experience. The most surprising call came from Kingston's new interim CEO, requesting a meeting. "We've reviewed the evidence," she said when I sat across from her, in the same executive conference room where I'd once presented my analyses. "The board wants to offer you a formal apology, reinstatement with a substantial promotion, and compensation for damages." She slid a document across the table. A figure circled at the bottom that made my eyes widen. "We value loyalty and integrity, Mr. Mitchell. The company is undergoing changes. We need people like you." I stared at the paper, at the lifeline it represented. Financial security. Validation. My reputation restored. Everything I'd fought for. "Thank you," I said, standing up without touching the document, "but I'll have to decline." Her surprise was genuine. "May I ask why?" "Because some things, once broken, can't be fixed with money." Walking out of those glass doors for the second time felt different. This time, I held my head high. 3 days later, I received a text from Alexis. "Turn on Channel 7 now." I flipped on the TV to see Marcus being led out of his home in handcuffs, federal agents flanking him as news helicopters circled overhead. The charges were extensive: securities fraud, wire fraud, obstruction of justice. The case had expanded beyond Kingston, reaching into his previous firms, uncovering a pattern spanning years. I'd imagined this moment for months. The satisfaction, the vindication I'd feel watching Marcus's downfall. Instead, I felt a complicated hollowness. This man had been my mentor, had shaped years of my professional life. I remembered late nights strategizing in his office, his genuine pride when I'd closed my first major account. Had it all been an act? Or had something in him changed along the way? The line between justice and revenge blurred in ways I hadn't anticipated. When the doorbell rang that evening, I opened it to find a delivery, a small package from my former colleague in Chicago, the one who'd warned me they would destroy me. Inside was a single bottle of 18-year-old scotch and a note: "To having the courage I didn't." The next week brought another surprise. A job offer from Rivera Partners, Kingston's biggest competitor. "We've been watching how you've handled yourself," the hiring manager said. "That's the kind of integrity we need." The salary was better than anything Kingston had offered, with the explicit understanding that I would help them implement stronger compliance protocols. This time, I accepted. My first day at Rivera, I arrived early, watching the sunrise paint the skyline gold. The same skyline I'd viewed from Marcus's office, but from a different angle now. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "So proud of you, son. Always knew you'd find your way." She didn't know the whole story yet. I'd sheltered them from the worst of it, only saying I'd changed firms for a better opportunity. But now, with the medical bills covered by my signing bonus and her treatment back on track, I could finally tell them the truth. Not just about what had happened, but about what I'd learned. 6 months later, I sat in a crowded courtroom watching Marcus enter his guilty plea. Our eyes met briefly across the room. In his, I saw recognition, perhaps a flicker of regret. I'd expected to feel triumph in this moment. Instead, I felt something closer to peace. Outside the courthouse, a young reporter thrust a microphone toward me. "Mr. Mitchell, how does it feel to be vindicated after everything you went through?" I considered the question, thinking about the cost of this journey. The sleepless nights, the financial strain, the relationships tested and sometimes broken. But also, the strength I'd found. The purpose that now guided my work. The knowledge that when tested, I hadn't compromised. "It's not about vindication," I said finally. "It's about remembering that we always have choices. Sometimes the hardest choice and the right choice are the same thing." Walking away from the courthouse, I called my mother. "It's over," I told her. "We won." "No, Zayden," she replied, her voice strong despite her illness. "You didn't win. You survived with your soul intact. That's much harder." As I look back now from my new office, smaller than Marcus's corner suite, but with a view I've earned honestly, I think about the fine line between success and integrity, between ambition and greed. I think about how easy it is to cross that line one small compromise at a time, until you can't recognize yourself anymore. Sometimes I wonder if Marcus started like me, hungry, ambitious, principles intact, before something shifted. I've made it my mission to check my moral compass daily, to remember that no spreadsheet, no client, no bonus is worth the price of becoming someone you'd be ashamed to face in the mirror. The plaque on my desk reads, "The truth has a cost. Lies cost more." Every morning I touch it before I start my day, a reminder of how quickly everything can change, how vigilantly integrity must be guarded, and how sometimes the greatest victory isn't in taking someone down, but in remaining standing yourself.